we'll get started and to give us enough time for Q&A at the end. My name is Maëva Gauthier. Welcome to the Community-Led Research Seed Fund info session for MEOPAR. And today we'll be going over the call for proposal and answer any questions you may have, or do our best to answer the questions you may have. And the webinar will be recorded and posted on the MEOPAR website. And I will make sure to email everybody who registered for this webinar so you get a copy as well and a copy of the slides. So let's get started. And before we get started, to get us started in a good way, I'd like to acknowledge with respect the Lekwungen speaking people on whose territory I live on, and the Lekwungen and Wisanish peoples on whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. So I am located in Victoria, and I'm a French settler originally from Quebec on Anishinaabe territory. And I am aware that we all come from different lands and coastline here on this call. So I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather today are traditional territories from coast to coast to coast, from First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities. So I'd like to invite you to share with us in the chat where you're from, and also it'd be great to know if you are new to MEOPAR. So I'd like to also honor the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who have stewarded these lands and waters for generations. And I think as myself a settler, I feel it's very important to learn the truth, unlearn, and take action towards reconciliation every day. So I'd like to invite you all to collectively contribute to meaningful reconciliation. And today we are very lucky. We have a great contingent from MEOPAR team on this webinar. There's Jamie Snook, our executive director. I'm Maëva Gauthier, the program manager in community-based research and community-led research. Ryan Ford, project accountant, will be helping answering questions around budget or financials. And Isabelle Tremblay is our senior program manager. She's also on this call to help with overarching questions around the call for proposal process and things like that. And we also have Rosie and Marina helping in the background to make sure this presentation runs smoothly. So Rosie, our communications coordinator, and Marina is our communications intern. So very grateful for all your support. And I don't necessarily see the chat as I go, so please, bear with me. But I think Marina and Rosie will be monitoring the chat. So thank you for sharing where you're from. So on our next slide here, just to give you a little bit more context on what we're going to cover today, some housekeeping notes. Sorry, I just see this poll coming in. We wanted to do a poll before we start actually about, are you new to MEOPAR Network? And what is your organization sector? To just give us a sense of who's in the room today. So it's great to see. Thank you for sharing. That might help gauge what kind of information we should focus on. So I see we have a great group that's actually new to MEOPAR Network. So welcome, and you're very welcome, and we're happy that you're here. And in terms of sectors, we have a great proportion of Indigenous-led organization, nonprofit organization, and university, and other. Feel free to put in the chat what organization sector or ocean sector you're from. Awesome, that's great. So I will end the poll for now, but feel free to continue the conversation in the chat. Wow, we have about 80% that are new to MEOPAR. Wow. So I'll share the results. I don't know if you are able to see. Great. So, having a bit of a housekeeping notes, feel free to keep your camera on or off. The meeting is recorded, and the portion of this first portion will be more presentation style, about 20-30 minute presentation, but I want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A at the end. And please keep the chat mostly for conversation, introduction, things like that. And then I would encourage you to use the Q&A button at the bottom or at the top, depending on where your menu is for Zoom, to put in your questions. So maybe I will answer them as we go and share information. And anything I didn't cover, we'll make sure to go over that in the second portion of the webinar. And if you want and you prefer to raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask a question, that's great. It'd be great to see or hear you as well. So if Jamie is still online, I would like to invite Jamie Snook, our Executive Director, to share a little bit about MEOPAR and the new science strategy in the context of this community-led research seed fund. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mava. Thanks for the great introduction to our webinar. And my name is Jamie Snook. I'm from Labrador originally, on the traditional homelands of the Innu and the Inuit, but now live in Mi'kma'ki and calling in from there. So MEOPAR has been around since 2012 and essentially has been distributing funding and grants to the ocean sector since that time in a wide variety of fields. But most recently, last year, we were fortunate to get some new funding from Canada's Strategic Science Fund and the Department of Innovation, Science and Economic Development. And one of the priorities of our proposal and of that department is Indigenous reconciliation. So MEOPAR is newer, I would say, to this space than some other organizations that you may be familiar with that are out there. And we're new, but we're wanting to do this in a good way. And the first program that we're starting with is this seed fund to give people a budget to actually create relationships and to be able to create research proposals in a good way. And that goes both ways, I should say. It's not just a fund where researchers need to make good relationships with Indigenous communities and coastal communities, but the communities themselves are eligible for MEOPAR funding, and that's fundamentally different as well. Where in the past, a lot of academic research money had to flow through the universities themselves. So we're certainly encouraging proposals to come from the communities themselves. And in those cases, it could be that proposals are articulated to be done by community-based researchers who are actually from the community, or it could be that you're building relationships with researchers and you're the one that's reaching out and seeing who's the right people for you to work with, which is uh, a bit untraditional, I would say, but the way research traditionally has happened in the past. So we certainly wish everyone luck in this process. We're hoping to receive many good proposals. We will also be, I should put in a plug that we will also be advertising for some Indigenous and community-based research reviewers for this competition. So if you're interested in applying, I'd encourage you not to get on the review committee because that would put you in a conflict. But when you do see that ad, feel free to share it. And we want to make sure that people that have this particular type of research expertise are given the opportunity to review the proposals. And we do have a scientific strategy that that MEVA will make available to everyone, and I just put the main objectives of that strategy in the chat rather than just read them all out. But if you do have any questions and want any of that interpreted or articulated and how you may see yourself in those objectives, by all means, reach out to me. Even I think she's going to cover some of that in today's webinar. So with that, I wish everyone luck and you, Maeva, in delivering this program. Thank you and take care.
Thank you, Jamie. That's great thing. And Jamie shared in the chat the main objectives, and Rosie or Marina will post the new strategy, science strategy link in the chat as well. And so if I may reword some of these terms in a way that perhaps communities might find themselves more reflected. When we talk about end user driven science, it's about communities. So communities have led research for millennia, I would say, and maybe it's not called research; it's called lived experiences, and it's called traditional knowledge. And this is very important knowledge that we want to promote and encourage to go forward. So any questions you have around how your project fits these objectives, I'd be happy to have a conversation, or feel free to add questions also in the Q&A for later on this call. So great. So before we go too far into the presentation itself about the fund, I wanted to set the stage a little bit more about definitions. What do we mean by Indigenous-led research? What do we mean by community-led research? And it's perhaps some of you are familiar with it, but perhaps not everyone. So Indigenous-led research, if we look at the SSHRC definition online, it's more research that's grounded and led by First Nation, Inuit, Métis, or other Indigenous nations, and tends to follow their wisdom, cultures, experiences, or knowledge systems. And there is more information about types of Indigenous methodologies that exist out there. Tends to use a lot of storytelling approaches, circles, different forms of arts, and lived experiences as a group, so collective sharing and things like that. So I'd invite you to read more about it if you need a little bit more guidance, or have a conversation with me as well. Community-led research. Community-led research is, and we'll put a link in the chat as well, between community-based and community-led research. There's a bit of a range of engagement, but tends to be participation from communities from all stages of the project, and knowing that the priorities are really coming from the community itself. So they're part of identifying the research questions and looking at the results interpretation, making meaning out of the data, and also using research findings to create change in the community that's wanted and needed. So I wanted to start with that, so we're all more on the same page on that. And there's different definitions out there, so always happy to have conversations around that. So the community-led research seed funding is especially for that early phase of project. And so it's about building relationship, co-design of projects. And it's this fund is up to 25,000 for 1 year. And we will get more into the details here. So in terms of basic eligibility and expectations, we're expecting that the project is Canadian based, but you can definitely have international partners if you have so. The primary applicant has to be able to be a grant holder within its organization. And it's often something that universities will ask about, because PhD students, postdoc are not always eligible to be a grant holder in their institutions. If you're from a nonprofit or another type of organization, it's just to make sure you are able to hold the grant within your institution. making sure you have alignment with the MEOPAR's objective and science strategy that we outlined. And we're happy to always discuss this so it makes more sense for the type of project that you have in mind. Um, MEOPAR has a big priority around diversifying the ocean sector. So not having only academics in the MEOPAR network, but also community members and community organizations, and working together to move forward on climate change resilience, coastal resilience, and the blue economy, so jobs in the ocean sector. There's a big focus as well on equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility, as well as truth and reconciliation considerations. And that in the evaluation criteria, there we can discuss a little bit more in depth about what we mean by that. And the partner contributions for this specific call, match funding is not mandatory. It's beneficial for sure, but it is not mandatory, knowing that sometimes early stage projects don't always have all the partner contributions in place. So that is a point that I wanted to highlight. In the call for proposal document, there's a few examples of activities that are mentioned. So I'm going to highlight a few there. Maybe you'll find yourself within that. Can be relationship building activities, so community engagement activities within the community or outside the community as well. That could be possible. So that can include travel cost or honoraria for elders and community members involved. It could be for co-design and planning activities. So looking at a workshop where people can collaboratively define goals, potential research questions, a mapping sessions to look at priorities and spatial knowledge, for example, the different marine use or coastal change. Research capacity development, so looking at skills building workshop, supporting community members on using research tools or helping with proposal development as well. And it can also be, creating a steering committee or an advisory group. So in terms of preparation of project applications, writing support for proposal development, and looking at, let's say, an agreement or a governance document and how to go about that. So those are all important phases, and it's not always easy to find funding for this important, crucial early phase. So our next slide here, you probably have seen the link on the website, but we'll probably have Marina or Rosie post the link, the call for proposals, seed fund. There's a section on the website with the call for proposal document. There's also an application form template that you can start filling out before the online portal open next week on SurveyMonkey, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And there's also the budget templates. So you'll see Appendix B for the project budget and the Appendix C for partner contributions, which could be in kind or cash, could be leverage or match funding. And there's a really nice infographic that our colleague Jonathan built around match and leverage funding. So there's some links as well to that. If you are confused about, is this leverage funding? When we talk about match funding, we talk about non-federal funding. And if it's federal funding, such as SHRC and CERC, some of these often academic funding that we get, this is leverage funding. So we'll have space for questions at the end, and Ryan is very, very good at the budget questions as well. So if you have any questions on that, we can go over that. Something kind of interesting this time for MEOPAR, which is kind of new, is to have the possibility of adding an audio or a video file. It's optional, but it can supplement your written answers. And so if you want to share anything that you find appropriate, like how this project response to community needs or priorities, any other elements that include more visual storytelling or as you know, sometimes it's so powerful to be able to see something, and so it's a great addition if you are able to do so. It's up to 5 minutes long, and it needs to be recorded separately and then uploaded, so it could be recorded on your phone. And so that's for some of these components. And there's also more details here. You'll find the link for it, more details on equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility, as well as Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I'll make sure to share the slides as well with you after the webinar. So the portal will open next week, but as I mentioned before, you can use the form, the application form, to go over the questions and brainstorm and start shaping up the project. The different components are, as we can probably guess, basic information about the applicant or the co-applicant. So you can have also one lead or two co-leads. And I'd like to highlight the importance of representation from Indigenous peoples and equity deserving groups, and encouraging that in the leadership team if possible, and as part of the team, and looking at more also how are you addressing equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility, as well as truth and reconciliation considerations. If your project is not Indigenous led, think about it in the lens of where is the project taking place, which water, which land, and how are you engaging with Indigenous communities in that region. Besides that, there's a lot of different sections. So we have the key performance indicators. If you are new to this term, KPIs, key performance indicators. So how do you know that your project, how do you measure success in a way? So in the application form, you'll see examples of potential KPIs, but you're also welcome to share your own if you have your own KPIs that feel like will help measure success in your project. Those can be quantitative, but I'd like to encourage two qualitative, different ways of measuring success. Besides that, we have letters of support. So if you are a university applicant, I would really like to encourage having letters of support that show that your project is community-led or Indigenous-led. And if you are an Indigenous organization or a nonprofit, then showing that this project is very community-led or Indigenous-led in your description, but the letters of support are optional for this application. So the portal closes October 4th, so there's still quite a bit of time. We wanted to make sure there's time for collaborators, partners to have the time to connect. And it's also summertime, so we're aware that people are in the field often and at this time of the year. So there is still time to connect if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to connect one-on-one. And there's also a webinar in French next week for French speakers. So in terms of SurveyMonkey, the online platform that we're using, it's going to be open next week, and so you'll be able to access it on the website. And there's also SurveyMonkey Apply user guide that that MEOPAR puts together to really help with that process. So if after having a look at that, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Where I know sometimes technology can get in the way, and perhaps internet access or internet stability is not always there. So feel free, like if you need support for your application, feel free to connect. Isabel, did you have anything you wanted to add? No? Okay. Great. Nice to see you. So in terms of the evaluation criteria, So the main focus is community leadership, engagement, and potential impact. So in that component, it's good to make the case on is the initiative really led, community led, and indigenous led, and is there a need that was expressed around this project or initiative? And what's the potential positive impact related to coastal resilience, research capacity, the blue economy, so the jobs related to the ocean in some ways. And there's different examples of that could, for example, the guardians programs, right? Monitoring programs on the coast. These things relate to the blue economy. In terms of relationship building, research capacity development, and future collaboration, that's another of the criteria. Does the activity create time and space for building trust, mutual learning, engagement, and the research capacity development as well? And does the project reflect openness to co-learning and working across knowledge systems? So we hear sometimes of the term braiding knowledge with Indigenous knowledge, Western science knowledge. So that's something that we want to see in terms of, is there that potential for future collaboration? And is this done in a good way? And then project budget, timeline, and use of funds, that's another 25%. So are the activities contextually appropriate within the scope and time frame of the seed funding? And I should mention here that if there is a need to extend the timeline a little bit, there is going to be flexibility around that. So I just want to make sure that we know, we are mindful that building relationships sometimes may take a bit longer, and so we have some flexibility around that. Is the budget appropriate, including fair compensation and justified use of resources? And does it align with the MEOPAR science strategy and some of the general like priorities and direction of MEOPAR? And then the next section is around EDIA and truth and reconciliation consideration. So does the project increase representation and inclusiveness and accessibility and diversity in the ocean sector? Do the leadership and participation reflect equity deserving representation? And are practices informed by lived experiences and community feedback? And Truth and Reconciliation Commission, it's looking more at having Indigenous voices centered in the leadership and the decision making. And is the cultural safety prioritized also throughout the project? And if your project is not Indigenous led, looking at more, are there efforts to engage with Indigenous communities that are connected with the land and water where the project is taking place? And there's going to be optional bonus points to support equity deserving groups and or people, communities from remote regions. And when we talk about remote regions in the Appendix A of the call for proposal, there's more details around what do we mean by that. So I invite you to have a look at that as well. So I think this section on the presentation is wrapping up, and we'll get more into the questions and answers. So again, I'd like to invite you to reach out to me if you have any questions or if you need to figure out how to frame your project within the seed fund, because some people might have a 1, 2, 3 year idea in mind, and sometimes it's hard to figure out, okay, for this seed fund, what makes the most sense. So happy to chat anytime. So thank you so much. And